The Hideaway Bar on Fifth
Oh,
Avenue had seen better days,
sorry
but
to
that was
set
part
you
of
up.
its
You
charm.
did that on
The kind of
purpose.
place where the brass nameplates on the wall told
Control, this
stories
is
of
Sector
Grenada,
7.
Panama,
I'm seeing an
and Desert
unauthorized
Storm,
signature on the northern
where the
perimeter.
whiskey was expensive and the conversation was cheap, where men who had done things they couldn't talk about came to forget things they couldn't remember.
Hold still.
It was 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night, and the mahogany bar gleamed under dim Edison bulbs. The air smelled of aged bourbon and leather mixed with the faint salt breeze drifting in from the Virginia coast. Most of the regulars had gone home. Most, but not all. Lieutenant Commander Adrienne Blackwell sat alone at the far end of the bar, her back to the wall, a habit from too many briefings in too many hostile countries. Always keep your six covered. Always know your exits. The glass of Maker's Mark in front of her was half empty, the ice melting slowly into amber liquid. She wasn't here to drink. She was here to think. The tablet on the bar in front of her glowed softly, displaying a three-dimensional rendering of a compound in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. 2,300 miles from where she sat, a world away yet close enough to touch through the encrypted files scrolling across the screen. Operation Sandstorm, 72 hours from execution. Her operation, her plan, her responsibility. Audrey was 28 years old, dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, gray sweater jeans, no makeup. She looked like any other professional woman unwinding after a long day. A lawyer, maybe, a consultant, certainly not someone who held the lives of 14 Navy SEALs in her hands. She zoomed in on the compound's eastern wall. 30 Taliban fighters according to intelligence. 30 men with AK-47s and RPGs guarding one man who knew too much about uranium enrichment. Dr. Elliot Reeves, 54 years old, Stanford PhD, kidnapped 14 days ago while consulting on a water purification project, a cover story that fooled no one. The Taliban weren't idiots. They knew what they had. Adrian's finger traced the insertion route on the screen. Two Blackhawks, low approach from the northwest using the mountain ridgeline for cover. Fast rope descent 50 meters from the compound. Alpha team takes the eastern wall. Bravo provides overwatch and secures the exfil route. Clean, simple, deadly, if everything went right. She took a sip of bourbon. It burned going down the way good whiskey should, the way doubt burned when you pushed it aside and did the job anyway. Across the bar, the door swung open. 6 men walked in and the temperature in the room changed, not physically, but energetically. The way a pack of wolves changes the energy when they enter a forest. They were young, mid-20s, fit in the way that only comes from 6 months of the hardest training program in the American military. Their haircuts were fresh. Their faces were clean-shaven. Their eyes carried that particular gleam of men who had just conquered something impossible and were still riding the high. Navy SEALs, fresh out of Bud/S. Adrienne recognized the look. She had seen it on every new graduate, that mix of invincibility and hunger, the belief that they were special, chosen, better than everyone else in the room. They were loud, not obnoxiously so, but loud enough. The kind of loud that came from wanting the world to know you existed, that you mattered, that you had earned the right to take up space. They pushed 2 tables together near the back and settled in, ordering a round of beers. Their laughter carried across the room, bouncing off the walls like friendly fire. Inside jokes about the teams, veiled references to the sandbox, speculation about where they would deploy first. Adrienne turned back to her tablet. She had work to do. The leader of the group was easy to spot. He sat at the head of the table, leaning back in his chair with the casual confidence of someone who had finished first in every race he had ever run. Tall, broad-shouldered, square jaw, the kind of man who looked like he had been genetically engineered for recruitment posters. Petty Officer Wyatt Thorne. Adrienne didn't know his name yet, but she knew the type. She had briefed hundreds of them. Competent, arrogant, convinced that youth and physical prowess were the only metrics that mattered. He would learn. They all did. The question was whether they learned before someone died or after. She zoomed out on the tablet, looking at the full tactical picture. The compound sat in a valley surrounded by low hills. The nearest Taliban QRF Quick Reaction Force was stationed in Lashkar-Gah, 12 minutes away by truck. 12 minutes was an eternity in combat. Or it was no time at all. It depended on whether your plan held together or fell apart. Adrienne had spent 6 weeks building this plan. 6 weeks analyzing satellite imagery, drone footage, signals, intelligence. 6 weeks wargaming every possible scenario, every contingency, every failure point. She had memorized the compound better than she knew her own apartment. She could walk through it blindfolded, knew where every guard stood, knew their patrol patterns down to the second, knew which doors opened in and which opened out. But knowing and doing were different things. On paper, every plan was perfect. In reality, plans survived until first contact. Then they became suggestions, guidelines, prayers. She took another sip of bourbon and closed her eyes. In her mind, she walked through the mission again. Havoc 1 and Havoc 2 approaching from the northwest. Flare at 50 meters, fast ropes deployed, boots on ground in 8 seconds. Alpha team moving to the eastern wall. Breaching charge. Entry, clear the first room, second room, third. She could see it, smell it. Taste the dust and cordite. Behind her, the SEALs' voices grew louder. Someone told a joke. The table erupted in laughter. A glass clinked. Another round ordered. Adriana opened her eyes and checked the time. 2200. She needed to get back to the office. Needed to finalize the comm protocols. Needed to verify that the satellite window would hold for the full 30-minute mission window. She reached for her bourbon to finish it. One last sip, then back to work. That's when Petty Officer Wyatt Thorne stood up and walked toward the bar. He moved with the easy swagger of someone who had never been told no, never been denied, never been made to feel small. His footsteps were heavy, confident, the kind of walk that announced you were coming and expected the world to get out of your way. He reached the bar and leaned against it, trying to catch the bartender's attention. The bartender was at the other end, pulling a draft beer for another customer. Thorne leaned further, raising his hand. His elbow swung wide. It happened in slow motion. The kind of slow motion you see in combat footage. The kind where you know what's coming but can't stop it. Thorne's elbow connected with Adriana's forearm. Hard. Her hand jerked. The glass of Maker's Mark tipped. Bourbon cascaded over the rim, splashing across the bar, across her sleeve, across the tablet. The liquid pooled on the screen, seeping into the edges. The display flickered. Once, twice, then went dark. Adrian stared at it. 4 hours of work. 4 hours of final mission prep. Gone. She looked up. Thorne was staring at her. Not apologizing, just staring. His face registered surprise but not concern. Not guilt. Just the mild annoyance of someone whose evening had been momentarily interrupted by an inconvenience. Then he laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh, not intentional, but it was dismissive. The kind of laugh you give when something mildly amusing happens but doesn't really matter. When you knock over a stranger's drink and find it funny rather than problematic. "Whoa, my bad," he said. But there was no apology in his tone, no real acknowledgement of what he had done. His eyes flicked from the bourbon-soaked tablet to Adrian's face. He took in her gray sweater, her ponytail, her small frame, and something shifted in his expression. Not respect, not concern, something closer to condescension. "Maybe stick to Cosmos, sweetheart," he said, the corner of his mouth turning up. "Leave the hard liquor to the operators." Behind him, his teammates had noticed the commotion. One of them, a wiry kid with a Texas drawl, cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled across the bar. "Blackwell down!" The table erupted. Laughter. Hooting. The kind of aggressive male bonding that came from shared cruelty disguised as humor. "Blackwell down!" Another one repeated, slapping the table. The name hung in the air. Blackwell. They were using her name, mocking her, completely oblivious to who they were talking about, to who they were insulting. Adrienne sat perfectly still. The bourbon was cold against her skin, soaking through her sleeve. The tablet was dead. 4 hours of work. 4 hours she would have to redo. 4 hours she didn't have. But she didn't move, didn't speak, didn't react. The bartender rushed over with a towel. "Jesus, I'm so sorry, ma'am. Let me—" Thorne slapped a $50 bill on the bar. "That cover it." He didn't wait for an answer. Didn't look at Adrienne. Just turned and walked back to his table, high-fiving his buddies as he went. The bartender leaned in close, his voice low. "Commander, I'm sorry. They don't know. They just graduated. They're idiots." Adrian looked at him. The bartender was older, 50s, former Marine based on the tattoo peeking out from under his sleeve. He knew exactly who she was, what she did, why she was here. "It's fine," she said quietly. She pulled the tablet toward her, dabbing it with the towel. The screen remained dark. Dead. "You want me to say something to them?" the bartender asked. "No." "Ma'am, no." Her voice was calm, final. "It's fine." It wasn't fine, but it would be. She gathered the soaked papers, the dead tablet, her leather satchel. She left 220s on the bar for the bourbon and the trouble. Then she stood and walked out without looking back. The cool night air hit her face as she stepped onto Fifth Avenue. The street was quiet. A few cars passed. A couple walked by hand in hand. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Adriano took a breath, let it out slowly. Then she got in her car and drove straight to the office. Naval Special Warfare Command sat on the eastern edge of Coronado, a sprawling complex of buildings that officially didn't exist on any map accessible to civilians. The security checkpoint waved Adrienne through without question. They knew her car, knew her face, knew she was here at all hours. The parking lot was nearly empty, just a few vehicles belonging to the night staff, intelligence analysts who worked on Afghan time, logistics officers coordinating gear shipments, the people who made the machine run while everyone else slept. Adriana's office was on the second floor of Building 7, a small windowless room with a desk, a computer, and a wall covered in satellite imagery. She kept a spare uniform in the locker, a go-bag with toiletries, a sleeping bag for the nights she didn't make it home. Tonight was one of those nights. She changed into the uniform, hanging the bourbon-soaked sweater in the locker to dry. Then she sat down at her computer and began reconstructing everything she had lost. The files were backed up, of course, but the notes she had been making, the final refinements, the last-minute adjustments, those were gone. She would have to recreate them from memory. She pulled up the satellite imagery, looked at the compound again. Eastern wall, northern gate, the dry wadi that ran along the southern perimeter. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, typing, calculating, cross-referencing. At midnight, her phone buzzed. A text from Sergeant Major Garrison Cole. "You still at the office?" Adrienne smiled slightly. Cole was 72 hours from retirement age, 65 years old, 43 years in the Navy, 25 of those as a SEAL. He had seen more combat than most people had seen movies about combat, and he still checked on her. Yes, 3 dots appeared. Then need company. "I'm fine, just redoing some prep work." "Bourbon-related accident." Adrian blinked. How did he know? Another text arrived before she could respond. "Miller called me. The bartender said some hotshot spilled your drink. Said you didn't say a word. Just left." Of course, Miller was former Marine. Former meant nothing in that world. Once a Marine, always a Marine. And Marines looked out for each other. Looked out for anyone who served. "It's fine. I'm handling it. I know you are. But you shouldn't have to handle everything alone. See you at 0800 for the brief. 0800. Confirmed. Get some sleep, Commander. You're no good to anyone if you're running on fumes." Adrienne set the phone down and rubbed her eyes. Sleep, right. Sleep was for people who didn't have 14 lives depending on them. She went back to work. The hours blurred together. Lines of code, satellite coordinates, communication frequencies, weather patterns, enemy patrol schedules. Every detail mattered. Every detail could mean the difference between life and death. At 0300, she finally leaned back in her chair. The plan was complete. Again, every contingency accounted for, every variable considered. She closed her eyes, just for a moment. When she opened them, gray light was filtering through the crack under her office door. Morning. She had dozed off in her chair for maybe 30 minutes. Her neck ached. Her back was stiff. But the work was done. She stood, stretched, made coffee in the break room. Strong and black. The kind that tasted like battery acid but did the job. At 0755, she walked to the secure briefing room. Cole was already there, sitting at the back, a cup of coffee in his hand. When he saw her, he smiled slightly. "You look terrible, Commander." "Good morning to you too, Sergeant Major. Did you sleep at all?" "Some." Liar. But there was affection in his voice. "You ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be." "Good, because those boys are going to remember this briefing for the rest of their lives." Adrienne walked to the front of the room, set up her laptop, connected it to the projection system. The three-dimensional rendering of the compound appeared on the massive screen behind her. At exactly 0800, the door opened. 14 SEALs filed in, moving quietly, efficiently. Each man found a seat in the 3 rows of chairs. They wore cargo pants and navy t-shirts. Their faces were clean-shaven. Their eyes were alert despite the early hour. These were the men who would execute Operation Sandstorm, the tip of the spear, the ones who would fast rope into darkness and bring back a hostage or die trying. Adrienne watched them settle in, noted their body language, their confidence, the way they carried themselves like men who had conquered the unconquerable and were ready for more. Then Petty Officer Wyatt Thorne walked in. He was in the middle of the group, not first, not last, just another operator ready for another briefing. He carried a notebook and a pen. His face showed no emotion. Professional, focused. He took a seat in the second row, opened his notebook, looked up at the screen, and froze. The woman from the bar was standing at the front of the room, the one he had spilled bourbon on, the one he had dismissed with a laugh and a condescending comment, the one whose name his buddies had turned into a joke. She was wearing the uniform of a United States Navy lieutenant commander, 3 gold stripes on her sleeve, ribbons across her chest, the insignia of naval special warfare on her collar. Thorne's face went pale. The color drained from his cheeks like water from a broken dam. His hand tightened on the pen, his jaw clenched. Around the room, recognition dawned on the other 5 SEALs who had been at the bar. The wiry Texan who had shouted "Blackwell down" was 2 seats over. His eyes went wide, his mouth opened slightly. No sound came out. Another operator, a muscular kid from Ohio named Garrett, muttered something under his breath that might have been a prayer or a curse. It was hard to tell which. Adrian saw it all, registered every reaction, every moment of dawning horror on their faces. She said nothing, did nothing, just stood there and waited for the last SEAL to take his seat. When the room was settled, she spoke. Her voice was calm, professional, completely devoid of emotion. The voice of someone who had practiced this briefing 100 times and would deliver it perfectly, regardless of personal circumstances. Gentlemen, I'm Lieutenant Commander Adrian Blackwell. I'm the Mission Operations Officer for Operation Sandstorm. For the next 6 hours, I will walk you through every phase of this operation. By the time we're done, you will know this compound better than you know your own homes. You will know where every guard stands when he relieves himself and which direction the wind will be blowing when you hit the ground. She clicked the remote. The compound rendering zoomed in on the eastern wall. The primary objective is Dr. Elliot Reeves, 54 years old, civilian contractor, uranium enrichment specialist. Kidnapped 14 days ago in Helmand Province, currently being held in the basement of this building. The laser pointer traced a path. The secondary objective is intelligence collection. Any documents, hard drives, or materials related to Taliban command structure. She paused and looked directly at the SEALs, her eyes swept across the room. When they reached Thorne, she held his gaze for exactly 1 second longer than necessary. It was enough. The man flinched as if she had struck him. You will be on the ground for no more than 30 minutes, she continued. Any deviation from that timeline and the quick reaction force will be scrambled from Lashkar Gah. They are 12 minutes out. That is a long time in combat. It is also no time at all. Everything depends on precision, timing, trust in the plan. She clicked again. A new slide appeared, topographic map of the insertion route. 2 Blackhawks, Havoc 1 and Havoc 2. You will approach from the northwest following this ridgeline to mask your heat signature. The terrain provides natural cover until you're within 500 meters. Then it's open ground, fast and low. Flare at 50 meters, fast rope deployment. 8 seconds from hover to boots on ground. Another click, satellite imagery showing the compound from above. Alpha Team, you are led by Petty Officer Thorne. 7 men. Your objective is the eastern wall. Entry point here. The laser pointer marked a door. Breaching charge. Controlled detonation. Entry in 6 seconds. Clear the ground floor. 4 rooms. Proceed to the stairwell. Basement access here. Thorne was writing in his notebook. His hand was shaking slightly, not much, but enough that the letters came out uneven. Adrian continued without pause. Bravo Team, you are providing overwatch. 7 men. Position here northwest corner. You have line of sight to the guard tower, the main gate, and the exfil route. Your job is to make sure Alpha can work without taking fire from above. She clicked through a series of slides. Guard positions, patrol patterns, communication protocols, emergency rally points, medevac procedures. The information came in a steady stream. Dense, technical, critical. Adrian spoke for 90 minutes without stopping. Her voice never wavered. Her focus never shifted. She was a machine delivering information that would keep these men alive or get them killed depending on how well they absorbed it. She walked them through the weather. Temperature at H hour would be 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind from the northwest at 8 knots. No precipitation expected. Visibility unlimited. Moon phase waxing crescent. 32% illumination. Enough to navigate by not enough to silhouette them against the sky. She walked them through the enemy. 30 Taliban fighters. Mostly local recruits. Some experienced. Based on intercepts, their commander was a mid-level operative named Khalil Haqqani. Not related to the Haqqani network despite the name. Competent but not exceptional. Expected attacks during the day, not at night. That was their advantage. She walked them through the compound layout. Every room, every hallway, every door. The basement where Dr. Reeves was being held. The reinforced door. The two guards who stood watch outside at all times. At the 90-minute mark, she stopped and looked at the room. Questions so far. Silence. The SEALs were processing, taking it in. Some were still writing notes. Others were staring at the screen, memorizing the details. Cole spoke from the back. Commander, what's the contingency if Dr. Reeves has been moved? Then we adapt. Alpha clears the entire compound. If he's not there, we extract and regroup. But intelligence suggests he's there. Thermal imaging shows a heat signature consistent with a single individual in the basement. Door is reinforced. Two guards outside at all times. And if the guard count is wrong, if there are more than 30, then we adjust fire positions. Bravo prioritizes targets based on threat level. But the intel is solid, 85% confidence. That's higher than most operations. Cole nodded. Good enough. Adrian turned back to the room. Petty Officer Thorne, primary exfil wrote if LZ Falcon is compromised. Thorne looked up from his notebook. His face was still pale. He swallowed once, then spoke. LZ Raven, ma'am. 1.5 kilometers northwest, using the Wadi for cover. And if that's compromised, LZ Eagle, 8 kilometers south, but it's exposed terrain, last resort. Correct. Why is LZ Eagle last resort? Because we'd be crossing open ground with no cover. QRF would have a clear line of sight. Exactly, remember that. In the heat of the moment, when things go wrong, your instinct will be to run for the nearest exit. Don't. Trust the plan. The primary and secondary exfils are designed to keep you alive. Anything else is gambling. She clicked to a new slide. Communication protocols. Radio frequencies. Primary is 247.5. Secondary is 251.8. If comms go down, you switch to hand signals. Everyone clear on the signals. A chorus of affirmatives. Code words. Execute is sandstorm. Abort is dust bowl. Package secure is jackpot. Any questions on the code, D's? Silence response. Good. Challenge and response. If you encounter someone you're not sure about, the challenge is thunder. The response is flash. If they don't give you the right response, they're hostile. Engage. She continued for another 2 hours. Walked them through every phase of the mission. The insertion, the assault, the exfil. What to do if someone was hit. What to do if the mission was compromised. What to do if everything went to hell and the only option was survival. At hour 3, she called a 15-minute break. The SEALs stood and stretched. Some went to the coffee station in the corner. Others stepped into the hallway to use the bathroom. The tension in the room eased slightly, not much, but enough to let them breathe. Thorne remained in his seat. He stared at his notebook, didn't move, didn't speak. Adrian walked to the back of the room where Cole was standing. How am I doing? She asked quietly. Perfect. They're absorbing it. You can see it in their eyes. Thorne looks like he's going to be sick. Good. Fear makes you careful. Careful keeps you alive. Adrian glanced at Thorne. He was still sitting, still staring. The realization of who she was, what she represented, had settled into his bones. Think he'll be able to focus? She asked. He'll focus, because he has to. Cole's voice was firm. And because you're going to make him. The 15 minutes ended. The SEALs filtered back in, took their seats. Adrian returned to the front of the room. Part 2, she said. Mission execution. She clicked to a new slide, a timeline. H-60, you're in the air. Havoc 1 and Havoc 2 crossing into Afghan airspace. Radio silence. Navigation lights off. Flying nap of the Earth to avoid radar. H-30, final approach. Pilots will call out landmarks. You'll verify against your maps. If anything looks wrong, you speak up. Better to abort on approach than to insert at the wrong grid. H-10, visual on target. Final checks, weapons hot, nods on, comms check. H-hour, fast rope deployment. Alpha hits the ground first. Bravo 2 seconds behind. Immediate security posture. 360 coverage. Anyone shoots at you, you return fire. But controlled, disciplined. We don't light up the neighborhood unless we have to. She walked them through the assault, step by step, second by second. Alpha team moving to the eastern wall, stacking on the door, breaching charge placed. 3-second countdown, detonation, entry. The first room, 2 Taliban fighters sleeping, suppressed shots, move on. The second room, empty, clear. The third room, weapons cache. Note the location. Keep moving. The fourth room, stairwell access. 2 guards. They're awake. This is where it gets loud. Adrian's voice was clinical, detached. She was describing violence the way a surgeon describes an operation. Necessary, precise, emotionless. You will encounter resistance, she said. Expect it. Plan for it. The guards are armed with AK-47s. They will fire. You will fire back. Aim for center mass. 2 shots. Confirm the target is down. Move on. She clicked to a schematic of the basement. Dr. Reeves is here. Northeast corner. Reinforced door. The guards outside won't have keys. You'll need to breach. Small charge. Don't overdo it. Reeves is a civilian. 54 years old. Likely injured. Possibly disoriented. You need him conscious and mobile. Once you have him, you exfil. Bravo team suppresses the guard tower. Alpha moves to LZ Falcon. Havoc 2 lands. Load up, wheels up. 30 minutes from insertion to extraction. She paused and looked at the room. 30 minutes. That's all you get. If you're not out by then, the QRF arrives. And if the QRF arrives, this becomes a different kind of fight. One you don't want. The room was silent. Every man was focused. Locked in. Ariane continued for another 2 hours. Communication protocols. Emergency procedures. Medevac coordinates. What to do if someone was taken prisoner. What to do if the mission had to be aborted. She walked them through contingencies they hoped would never happen. What if both helicopters were shot down? What if Dr. Reeves was already dead? What if the compound was actually a trap and they were walking into an ambush? For every what if, she had an answer, a plan, a way forward. By the time she finished, it was past noon, 6 hours of briefing. 6 hours of information compressed into the brains of 14 men who would have to execute it flawlessly in the dark under fire. She clicked off the screen and turned to face them. Gentlemen, you have 48 hours until wheels up. Use that time to rest, hydrate, review your notes, run through the plan in your head. Visualize every step. When you step off that helicopter, there are no second chances, no do-overs. You get it right the first time or people die. She paused. I need you to understand the stakes. Dr. Reeves is a good man. He has a wife, 2 daughters. He was doing humanitarian work and got kidnapped for it. Taliban will execute him in the next 72 hours. This is his only chance. You are his only chance. Her voice hardened slightly. But this isn't just about him. It's about every one of you. Your lives matter. Your families matter. I have spent 6 weeks building this plan to give you the best possible chance of success. Every detail, every contingency, I've thought through it all, but I can't execute it for you. That's on you. She looked directly at Thorne. So my question to every man in this room is this. Do you trust me? Do you trust this plan? Because if you don't speak now, we'll find someone else. But once you're on that helicopter, there's no turning back. You're committed, and I need to know you're committed. The room was silent. Then one of the SEALs in the front row stood up. A senior chief petty officer named Williams, 40 years old, grizzled, veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan. The kind of man whose opinion carried weight. Ma'am, he said, his voice gravelly, I've done 8 missions with your planning. 8. Every one of them came back clean. No casualties, no failures. I trust you more than I trust most officers I've served under. He looked around the room. And if any of you boots don't trust her, you can stay home, because I'm going and I'm coming back. Because she's going to make sure of it. He sat down. Adrienne nodded once. Thank you, Senior Chief. Another SEAL stood, then another. One by one, the men in the room stood, not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to. Thorne was the last to stand. His face was still pale, his jaw was tight, but he stood. Dismissed, Adrienne said. Briefing packets are at the door. Memorize them, burn them. I'll see you at Wheels Up in 48 hours. The SEALs filed out. Most of them nodded to her as they passed, a gesture of respect, acknowledgement. Thorne walked toward the door. His steps were slow, reluctant. He reached the exit, stopped, turned back. Adrienne was gathering her materials. Cole was standing next to her reviewing notes. Thorne walked back. His footsteps echoed in the now empty room. Ma'am, he said quietly. Adrienne looked up. Thorne stood at attention. His face was a mask of barely controlled emotion. Shame, regret, fear. Ma'am, about last night at the bar, I didn't know. I'm sorry. It was disrespectful and Adrienne held up a hand, cut him off. She studied him for a long moment, took in the genuine remorse on his face, the fear in his eyes. Not fear of punishment, fear that he had jeopardized the mission, fear that his stupidity might get people killed. Petty officer, she said quietly, forget the bourbon. Relief flickered in Thorne's eyes. I have forgotten the bourbon, she continued, but I have not forgotten the laughter. I have not forgotten the disrespect. I have not forgotten that you and your teammates acted like children in a place where professionals were working. The relief died. Thorne's face went rigid. Adrian stepped closer. Her voice dropped to just above a whisper. You are about to go into a dark room full of men who want to kill you. I am the one who planned how you get in, how you accomplish your mission, how you get out alive. Your life and the lives of your teammates depend on my work. She paused. So my question to you, petty officer, is this. Do you trust me? The question hung in the air between them. It was the only question that mattered. Everything else was noise. Thorne looked at her, really looked at her. Not at the woman from the bar, not at the gender or the age or the physical appearance. At the officer who held his fate in her hands. He thought about the compound, the guards, the 30-minute window, the quick reaction force 12 minutes away. He thought about going into that dark room, and he realized that the only person in the world who could guarantee he came back was standing right in front of him. Yes, ma'am, he said. His voice was firm, clear. I trust you. Adrian nodded once. Good. Then go get some rest. You're going to need it. Thorne hesitated. Ma'am, for what it's worth, I really am sorry. I know, she said. Now close the door on your way out. He turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. Cole waited until the sound of footsteps faded. Then he spoke. That was well done. Was it, you broke him down, built him back up, now he'll follow you anywhere. I didn't want to break him down. I wanted him to understand. He understands. Cole smiled slightly. And he'll remember this for the rest of his life. Win or lose, success or failure, he'll remember the woman who held his life in her hands and chose to save it. Adrian gathered the last of her materials. We haven't saved anything yet. Mission's still 48 hours out. True, but the hard part's done. You've got their trust. Now we just have to execute. Just. As if executing a high-risk hostage rescue in Taliban-controlled territory was simple. But Cole was right about one thing. The SEALs trusted her now. She could see it in their eyes, hear it in their voices. They would follow the plan, do their bow, trust the intel. Now she just had to make sure the plan held together. 48 hours, 2 days, then it would all be real. The next 2 days blurred together in a haze of final preparations. Adrian coordinated with the pilots, verified the satellite window, confirmed communication frequencies, double-checked weather forecasts, triple-checked everything. She barely slept. Grabbed meals when she remembered. Coffee became her primary food group. Cole checked on her regularly, brought her sandwiches she didn't taste, made her drink water, reminded her that she was human and humans needed rest. She ignored him. There was too much to do, too much that could go wrong. On the second night at 2300 hours, she was alone in her office when her phone rang. Unknown number, she answered. Blackwell? Commander, this is Dr. Elliot Reeves' wife, Margaret. Adrian sat up straight. Mrs. Reeves, how can I help you? The woman's voice broke. I know you can't tell me anything. I know it's classified, but I need you to know something. Ma'am, Elliot is a good man, the best man I know. He went to Afghanistan to help people, to make clean water accessible, and they took him for it. She was crying now, trying to hold it together. I have 2 daughters. They're 12 and 14. They think their father is already dead. Adrian, his throat tightened. Mrs. Reeves, I can't discuss ongoing operations. I know, if someone is trying to bring him home, I need them to know that we're waiting, that we love him, that we need him. Adrian closed her eyes. Mrs. Reeves, I can tell you this. There are people who care, who are doing everything in their power to bring Americans home. Always. Thank you, the woman whispered. Thank you. The line went dead. Adrian sat in the darkness of her office. She thought about 14 SEALs, about Dr. Elliot Reeves, about his wife and 2 daughters waiting for a man who might never come home. The weight of it pressed down on her like a physical force. She stood, walked to the wall covered in satellite imagery, stared at the compound, at the basement where Reeves was being held. I'll bring him home, she said to the empty room. I promise. It was a promise she had no business making, a promise that could be broken by 1,000 variables outside her control. But she made it anyway. At 0200 local time in Afghanistan, half a world away from where Adrienne sat, the mission began. She stood in the Joint Operations Center in Virginia, a massive room, wall-to-wall screens showing satellite feeds, drone footage, digital maps. The air hummed with the low thrum of servers and the quiet murmur of intelligence analysts. Cole stood next to her, also wearing a headset. His face was calm, focused. On the main screen, 4 blips moved across a digital map. 2 Blackhawks, Havoc 1 and Havoc 2, crossing into Afghan airspace, flying low and fast, hugging the terrain to avoid radar. Adrienne keyed her mic. Havoc 1 Overwatch, comms check, over. The response came immediately, clear, professional. Overwatch Havoc 1, loud and clear, 20 minutes to target. Copy Havoc 1, weather is green, no change to insertion plan, proceed as briefed. Roger Overwatch, proceeding. Adrienne fell silent. There was nothing to do now but watch and wait. The room was tense, focused, 30 people working in coordinated silence. Intelligence analysts monitoring enemy communications, drone operators tracking heat signatures, logistics officers coordinating medevac assets, everyone doing their part to bring 14 men home. Cole leaned close. You okay? Fine. Liar. Adrienne glanced at him. I'm as okay as I can be when 14 lives are on the line. That's fair. He paused. For what it's worth, this is the best planned mission I've seen in years. If it goes wrong, it won't be because you didn't prepare. And if it goes right, then you'll have proven what I already know, that you're one of the best officers in the Navy. Adrienne didn't respond. Couldn't. The weight of the moment pressed down on her like a physical force. On the screen, the Blackhawks were 10 minutes out. The blips moved steadily toward the compound. No deviation, no hesitation. The drone operator spoke. Overwatch Predator 1, I have eyes on target. Compound is quiet. Guards in standard positions. Count is... Wait. Adrienne's heart skipped. Predator 1 report. Overwatch, I'm seeing additional heat signatures. Stand by for count. Silence. 10 seconds. 15. 20. Overwatch Predator 1. Confirmed count is 50 heat signatures. Repeat 50, not 30 as briefed. The room went cold. 50 Taliban fighters, not 30. Nearly double the expected force. Adrienne's mind raced. 50 fighters changed everything. More guns, more positions to suppress. Higher chance of casualties. Admiral Stratford's voice came through her headset. He was in a separate room monitoring the operation. Overwatch Skywatch. I'm ordering an abort. Pull them back. Adrienne stared at the screen. At the compound, at the heat signature in the basement, that was almost certainly Dr. Elliot Reeves. If they aborted now, Reeves would be executed. Within hours. The Taliban would know an assault was planned. They would move him or kill him. This was the only chance. She thought about Margaret Reeves, about 2 daughters waiting for their father. Skywatch Overwatch. Request you hold that order. Negative Overwatch. 50 hostiles is outside mission parameters. We abort. Cole stepped closer to the console. He keyed his own mic. Admiral, this is Cole. Recommend we execute. Increased guard count means Reeves is more valuable than we thought. If we abort, they'll move him. We'll never get another shot. Sergeant Major, the risk is acceptable, sir. Commander Blackwell built contingencies for this exact scenario. Plan Bravo accounts for increased enemy presence. Stratford was silent for a moment. Then, Commander Blackwell, is that true? Adrienne took a breath. Yes, sir. Plan Bravo adjusts entry point to the eastern wall instead of the northern gate. Bravo team provides suppressive fire from elevated position. We can handle 50. Can you, or are you guessing? I'm not guessing, sir. I ran this scenario multiple times. It's viable. Another pause. Longer this time. Commander, if this goes wrong. It won't, sir. You don't know that? No, sir. But I know the plan, I know the team, and I know we don't get second chances. This is it. The seconds stretched. In the background, the Blackhawks continued their approach. 5 minutes to target. Finally, Stratford spoke. Your call, Commander, but God help us if you're wrong. Adrienne keyed her mic. Havoc 1 Overwatch. Enemy counted is higher than expected. 50 hostiles. Execute Plan Bravo. Repeat Plan Bravo. A brief pause. Then the pilot's voice came back. Calm, professional. Copy Overwatch. Executing Plan Bravo. Entry via Eastern Wall. Bravo team elevated Overwatch. Understood. Affirmative Havoc 1, you are cleared hot. Good hunting. Roger that. Cole looked at Adrian. Don't. You made the right call. I hope so. You did. Now we execute. The Blackhawks crossed the final ridgeline. The compound came into view on the drone feed, a cluster of buildings in the darkness. Heat signatures moving along the walls. Guards on patrol. Adrian watched the countdown timer. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute. The helicopters flared, hovered 50 meters from the compound. Fast ropes deployed. Dark figures dropped into the night. The mission had begun. The fast ropes hit the ground with soft thumps that wouldn't carry beyond 50 meters. One by one, the SEALs descended. Black shapes against black sky. Ghosts with guns. Adrian watched it all through the helmet cameras. Multiple feeds on multiple screens. A disorienting kaleidoscope of green-tinted night vision. She could see what they saw. The compound walls. The rocky ground. The shadows where Taliban fighters stood guard. Alpha Team touched down first. 7 men in a tight perimeter. Thorne was point. His camera feed showed him scanning left to right. Weapon up, finger outside the trigger guard. Professional. Bravo Team landed 2 seconds later. They moved immediately to the northwest corner. Higher ground, better angle for suppressive fire. The helicopters pulled up and away, rotors fading into the distance. Now it was just 14 men on the ground in hostile territory. 30 minutes to get in, get the hostage, get out. The clock started. Adrian keyed her mic. Alpha 1 Overwatch. You are clear to move. Closest guard is at your 3 o'clock. 20 meters. Behind the fountain. Thorne's voice came back, quiet, controlled. Copy Overwatch. I don't have visual on the fountain. It's there. Trust the feed. Move on my mark. She watched the thermal imagery. The guard was facing away, looking toward the main gate. His patrol pattern had him turning in 15 seconds. Mark, move now. Alpha Team flowed forward, low, fast, silent. They covered the distance in 8 seconds. Stacked on the eastern wall, Thorne at the front, the breacher behind him with the charge. No alarm. No shots, no indication they had been spotted. Adrian exhaled slowly. First phase complete. Alpha 1, you're clear. Proceed to entry point. The team moved along the wall. The door was 10 meters ahead. Old wood, reinforced with metal bands. The kind of door that looked medieval, but would stop small arms fire. Not explosives, though. The breacher placed the charge. Small, controlled, shaped to blow inward without bringing down the whole wall. He attached the det cord, stepped back, gave the signal. Thorne's voice, Overwatch Alpha 1. Breaching in 3, 2, 1. The explosion was a muffled crump, barely louder than a car door slamming. But effective. The door blew inward in a shower of splinters. Alpha Team poured through. Now it got loud. The first room was small, 2 Taliban fighters asleep on mats. They were waking up, reaching for weapons. Too slow. Suppressed gunfire. 2 shots each. The fighters went down, didn't get up. Alpha Team moved through, smooth, efficient, like water flowing through cracks. Second room, empty, clear. Third room, weapons cache. A K-47 stacked against the wall. RPG rounds in wooden crates. Thorne's camera lingered for 2 seconds, long enough to note the location, then moved on. Fourth room, the stairwell. 2 guards, wide awake, weapons in hand. They saw Alpha Team, shouted, raised their AKs. Thorne fired first, center mass. The guard dropped. The second guard got off 3 rounds, wild, high. The bullets punched into the ceiling. Return fire from Alpha 2. The guard went down. Now everyone knew they were there. Adrian heard shouts through the helmet cams. Taliban fighters scrambling, boots on stone, the metallic clack of weapons being charged. Bravo 1 Overwatch. You're about to have company. Guard tower. 2 hostiles climbing the ladder. Bravo Team leader responded immediately. Copy Overwatch. I have visual. 2 suppressed shots. The Taliban fighters fell from the ladder. Hit the ground. Didn't move. Tower clear. Good shooting. Stand by. More coming from the northwest. Adrian was tracking everything. The thermal feed showed heat signatures converging on the compound. Taliban fighters who had been sleeping were now awake and armed. They were moving toward the gunfire. 50 fighters, just like the drone had counted. And all of them were about to become a problem. Cole leaned close. Bravo needs to slow them down. I know, Adrian keyed her mic. Bravo 1 shift fire to northwest approach. Suppress the advance. Keep them off Alpha's back. Roger, shifting. Bravo Team opened up, not suppressed anymore. Full auto. The night lit up with muzzle flashes. Tracer rounds streaked through the darkness. The Taliban advance hesitated, scattered, took cover. It wouldn't hold them long, but it didn't need to, just long enough for Alpha to get to the basement. Thorne's voice cut through. Overwatch Alpha 1. We're at the stairwell, descending now. Copy Alpha 1. Basement layout is as briefed. Dr. Reeves should be in the northeast corner. Reinforced door. Expect guards. Understood. The camera feed showed the stairwell. Narrow, stone, dark even with night vision. Thorne descended carefully. Weapon up, each step deliberate. At the bottom a hallway. Low ceiling, concrete floor. 3 doors. One straight ahead, one left, one right. Adrian pulled up the schematic. Alpha 1 target room is straight ahead. 30 feet. Thorne moved forward. The hallway was empty. Too empty. The kind of empty that felt wrong. 10 feet from the door it opened. A Taliban fighter stepped out. He had an AK-47 in one hand, a radio in the other. He was mid-sentence when he saw Thorne. His eyes went wide. Thorne fired. 2 shots. The fighter dropped. The radio clattered to the floor. A voice squawked from it, Pashto. Rapid. Urgent. They knew exactly where Alpha Team was now. Overwatch Alpha 1, we're compromised. They know our position. Adrian and his mind raced. Compromise meant the Taliban would reinforce. Surround. Try to trap them in the basement. Copy Alpha 1. You need to move fast. Get Reeves and exfil. Bravo increase suppression. Do not let them flank. Bravo copies. Thorne reached the reinforced door. It was steel. Heavy. The kind of door designed to keep people in or out. The breacher stepped forward, placed a charge. Much smaller this time. Just enough to blow the lock without collapsing the ceiling. Breaching. The explosion echoed in the confined space. The door buckled. Didn't open. The lock held. Thorne kicked it. Once. Twice. On the third kick, it swung inward. The room beyond was small. Dark. A single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. And in the corner, chained to a metal ring in the wall, was Dr. Elliot Reeves. He was 54 years old, but looked 70. Gaunt. Bruised. His left eye was swollen shut. His shirt was torn and stained with dried blood. But he was alive. He looked up at the seals, squinted against the light from their NVGs. His voice was hoarse. Broken. American. Yes, sir. We're here to get you out. Reeves started to cry. Not sobbing, just silent tears running down his face. Alpha 3 moved forward with bolt cutters. The chain was thick. Hardened steel. It took 3 tries to cut through. When it finally snapped, Reeves nearly collapsed. Thorne caught him. Doc, can you walk? I think so. Good, because we need to move. Right now. They lifted Reeves to his feet. He was unsteady, weak, but he could stand. Overwatch Alpha 1, we have the package. Exfilling now. Adrian felt a rush of relief. They had him. Phase 2 complete. Now they just had to get out. Copy Alpha 1. Exfil route is clear. Elza Falcon is standing by. Move fast. But even as she said it, she saw the problem on the thermal feed. Taliban fighters were streaming toward the compound from all directions. Not scattered anymore. Organized. Coordinated. Someone was directing them, and they were moving to cut off the exfil route. Alpha 1 Overwatch. Be advised you have hostiles moving to intercept. Estimate 20 fighters between your position and Elza's Falcon. Thorne's breathing was heavy through the mic. He was moving, helping Reeves up the stairs. The rest of Alpha Team providing security. Overwatch recommend alternate exfil. Adrian pulled up the map. LZ Falcon was compromised. LZ Raven was to the northwest. The Wadi, cover and concealment. But it was farther, and Reeves was injured. She made the call. Alpha 1 new exfil, LZ Raven, grid 427391. Follow the Wadi northeast. Havoc 2 is rerouting. Copy. How far? 1.5 kilometers. A pause, then. That's a long way with a wounded civilian. I know, but it's the only way. Thorne didn't argue. Understood. Moving to Raven. Alpha Team emerged from the compound. The night was chaos now. Gunfire from multiple directions. Bravo Team was laying down suppressive fire. Controlled bursts, disciplined, but they were outnumbered. Cole spoke quietly next to Adrian. They're not going to hold much longer. They have to. Commander, they have to. Her voice was steel. We're not leaving anyone. She keyed her mic. Bravo 1 Alpha is moving to alternate exfil. Once they're clear, you collapse and follow. Leapfrog pattern. Do not get pinned down. Copy Overwatch. We'll hold as long as we can. Alpha Team was running now. Thorne had Reeves over his shoulder in a fireman's carry. The other 6 SEALs were spread out, 3 ahead, 3 behind. Moving fast through rocky terrain, Adrian watched the helmet cams. The ground was uneven, loose stones, easy to trip, easy to fall. Reeves was conscious, but barely. His head lolled. His breathing was shallow. Alpha 1 housed the package. Alive, weak, but he's hanging on. Good. Keep moving. You're 500 meters from the wadi. The thermal feed showed Taliban fighters pursuing. Not close yet, but closing. They knew the terrain, knew the shortcuts. This was going to be tight. Bravo team started their collapse. Fire and movement. 3 men shooting while 3 men moved. And then Rivers' textbook. But the Taliban were pressing, emboldened by their numbers. They had Alpha team on the run, and they knew it. A voice cut through the comms. Alpha 4 panicked. Contact rear. We've got fighters on R6. Gunfire erupted. Close, too close. Thorne's voice, Overwatch, we're taking fire. Need cover. Adrienne pulled up the drone feed. Switched to thermal. She could see the Taliban fighters. 5 of them. Moving fast, trying to flank Alpha team. Her mind calculated angles. Distances. Lines of sight. Alpha 1 stop. Behind the rock outcropping at your 10 o'clock. Defensive position. Stopping puts us in the open. Trust me. Do it now. Thorne didn't hesitate this time. He veered left. The team followed. They reached the rocks, took cover. The Taliban fighters kept coming. They didn't see the position. Didn't know Alpha had stopped. They walked right into the kill zone. Alpha 1 targets at your 11 o'clock. Range 30 meters. 4 hostiles. Thorne's camera swung up. Acquired targets. 4 Taliban fighters moving in the open. Exposed. Light them up. Alpha team fired as one. Disciplined, controlled. The Taliban fighters went down in a heap. Silence. Clear, Thorne said. Moving. They were up again. Running. The wadi was close now. 200 meters. Adrienne checked the time. 23 minutes since insertion. 7 minutes until the quick reaction force arrived from Lashkar Gah. They weren't going to make the 30-minute window. All elements Overwatch. QRF is early. ETA 7 minutes. I repeat, 7 minutes. Move faster. No acknowledgement. They were already moving as fast as they could. The wadi came into view on the helmet cams. A dry riverbed. Rocky. Deep enough for cover. The perfect exfil point. Alpha team reached it. Dropped into the depression. Finally some cover between them and the Taliban. Overwatch Alpha 1. We're in the wadi. Where's our ride? Adrienne looked at the screen showing Havoc 2's position. The helicopter was 2 minutes out. 2 minutes might as well be 2 hours. Havoc 2 is inbound. ETA 2 minutes. We might not have 2 minutes. He was right. The thermal feed showed Taliban fighters reaching the edge of the wadi. They were setting up positions, getting ready to pour fire down into the riverbed. This was where it would end. Either the helicopter arrived in time or Alpha team would be pinned down and destroyed. Adrienne's hand tightened on the edge of the console. She felt helpless. For all her planning, all her preparation. It came down to this, waiting, hoping, praying that a helicopter could cover 2 minutes of ground before 20 Taliban fighters opened fire. Cole's hand rested on her shoulder. Steady, calm. They'll make it, he said quietly. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because they have you in their ear, and you won't let them die. Adrienne looked at the screen, at Thorne's camera feed. He was crouched in the wadi, weapon up, scanning for targets. Next to him, Reeves was conscious, terrified, but alive. She keyed her mic. Alpha 1 Overwatch. I need you to listen to me very carefully. Go ahead. In 30 seconds, you're going to have company, Taliban fighters, northeast rim of the wadi. They're going to shoot down at you. You'll be exposed. Copy. What do you want us to do? Adrienne pulled up the satellite imagery, looked at the terrain. There was a bend in the wadi 50 meters ahead, a curve that would put rock between Alpha team and the Taliban positions. Move 50 meters northeast. There's a bend. You'll have hard cover. Havoc 2 can extract you there. Overwatch, we can't see 50 meters in this terrain. There's no visibility. Adrienne zoomed in on the feed. He was right. The wadi was a maze of rocks and shadows. Night vision only went so far, but she could see it on the satellite image, clear as day. Alpha 1, I can see it. You're going to have to trust me. Silence. Just for a moment. Then Roger Overwatch. We're moving on your call. Stand by. She watched the thermal feed. The Taliban fighters were in position. Any second now they would open fire. Move. Now, straight ahead. Don't stop. Don't look back. Just run. Alpha team moved. Thorne carried Reeves. The rest of the team formed a protective box around them. They ran blind through the darkness, trusting Adrian's voice, trusting the plan. The Taliban opened fire. Muzzle flashes lit up the rim of the wadi. Bullets ricocheted off rocks, kicked up dust. The sound was deafening even through the helmet mics, but Alpha team kept moving. 30 meters. Keep going. More gunfire. Closer now. One of the SEALs grunted, hit, but he kept running. 20 meters. Almost there. Thorne's breathing was ragged. He was carrying a full-grown man over rough terrain while being shot at, but he didn't slow down. 10 meters. You're going to see the bend on your left. Hard turn. I don't see it. It's there, trust me. 5 meters. 4. 3. The bend appeared on Thorne's camera. A sharp curve in the wadi. Rock walls on both sides. I see it. Go, go, go. Alpha team rounded the bend, disappeared behind solid rock. The Taliban fire continued, but it was hitting stone now, not flesh. They were safe. For the moment. Adrian exhaled. Her hands were shaking. She gripped the console to steady them. Alpha 1 status. We're clear. 1 wounded, not serious. But we need that bird, now. Havoc 2, what's your ETA? The pilot's voice came through, calm, professional. Overwatch Havoc 2, 30 seconds. I have visual on the wadi. Where do you want me? Adrian looked at the map. The bend in the wadi opened up into a slightly wider area, enough room for a helicopter to hover. Barely. Havoc 2 set down at grid 427393. The wadi opens up. You'll fit. Copy. Coming in hot. 20 seconds. The Taliban had figured out where Alpha went. They were moving, trying to get a new angle. Trying to get above the bend where they could shoot down again. Bravo team was still fighting, still providing cover, but they were down to half ammo, running on fumes. 10 seconds. The sound of rotors echoed through the wadi, getting louder, closer. Havoc 2 appeared, a massive black shape dropping out of the sky. The pilot flared hard, nosed up, rear wheels touched the rocky ground. Alpha 1, your ride's here, load up. Thorne didn't need to be told twice. He carried Reeves to the helicopter. Literally threw him into the cargo bay. The other SEALs piled in. 5, 6, 7, they were in. Bravo 1 collapsed to Havoc 1, time to go. Copy Overwatch, moving now. Bravo team broke contact, ran for their extraction point. The Taliban pursued but half-heartedly. They had lost. They knew it. Havoc 2 lifted off. Rotors screaming, pulling up and away from the wadi. Bullets pinged off the armor belly, but nothing critical. 30 seconds later, Havoc 1 picked up Bravo team. Both helicopters turned west, accelerating, putting distance between themselves and the compound. Adrian watched the blips on the screen. Moving away, getting smaller, leaving Afghan airspace. The mission clock read 28 minutes, 2 minutes under the limit. She keyed her mic one last time. All elements Overwatch. You are clear of hostile territory. Mission success. Well done. A chorus of acknowledgments came back. Tired voices, relieved voices, alive voices. Cole was smiling, actually smiling, a rare sight. You did it, he said. Adrian shook her head. They did it. You guided them, every step. Without you, they'd be dead. She didn't respond, couldn't. The adrenaline was wearing off. The exhaustion was setting in. 6 weeks of planning, 6 hours of briefing, 30 minutes of execution. And now it was over. Dr. Elliot Reeves was alive. 14 SEALs were alive. Mission success. She sat down in the chair behind the console. Her legs suddenly felt like water. Admiral Stratford's voice came through her headset. Commander Blackwell, report to my office, now. Her stomach dropped. Was he angry? Had she overstepped? The decision to continue despite the increased enemy count had been hers. If he disagreed, yes sir, on my way. She pulled off the headset, stood. Cole was watching her. Want me to come with you? No, I'll handle it. She walked out of the operations center, down the hall, up 2 flights of stairs, to the Admiral's office. She knocked. Enter. She stepped inside. Stratford was behind his desk. His face was unreadable. Close the door. She did, stood at attention, waited. Stratford looked at her for a long moment. Then he stood, walked around the desk, and extended his hand. That was exceptional work, Commander. Adriana blinked, took his hand. Sir, I doubted you, I'll admit it. I thought you were too young, too inexperienced. I was wrong. Sir, the team executed perfectly because you planned perfectly, because you adapted when the situation changed, because you made the right call when I wanted to abort. He paused. That took guts and judgment, both of which you have in spades. Adriana didn't know what to say. Stratford smiled slightly. Go get some sleep, Commander. You've earned it. We'll debrief properly when the team gets back. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. She turned to leave. And Commander, she looked back. I'm recommending you for a commendation. This mission will be studied for years, and your name will be on it. Adrian nodded. Thank you, sir. She walked out, made it halfway down the hall before the emotions hit. Relief, exhaustion, pride, fear that had been suppressed for 6 weeks and was only now being released. She found an empty office, closed the door, sat down in the dark, and allowed herself exactly 2 minutes to feel everything. Then she stood up, straightened her uniform, and went back to work. There were still after-action reports to write, debriefs to prepare for, lessons learned to document. The mission was over, but the job never was. 18 hours later, Adrian stepped off a C-130 cargo plane at Forward Operating Base Dwyer in Helmand Province. The sun was setting. The desert was painted in shades of orange and red. The temperature was dropping from scorching to merely hot. She had flown through the night to get here, to be present for the debrief, to see the team, to close the loop. The SEALs were waiting in a tent near the flight line. She could hear them before she saw them. Laughter, the sound of men who had looked death in the face and lived to tell about it. She stepped into the tent. The laughter stopped. 14 men turned to look at her. They were still in their combat gear. Dirty, exhausted, but alive. Senior Chief Williams stood. The others followed. Adrian held up a hand. As you were. They sat back down. But the atmosphere had changed. The casual banter was gone, replaced by something else. Respect. Standing next to the SEALs was Dr. Elliot Reeves. He had been cleaned up, bandaged. His left eye was still swollen, but he could see out of both now. His arm was in a sling, but he was standing. When he saw Adrian, he stepped forward. His voice was thick with emotion. Commander Blackwell, Dr. Reeves, it's good to see you alive. I'm alive because of you, because of all of you. He looked around the tent. Taliban told me they were executing me this morning, said it was already decided. Then I heard explosions, gunfire, and these men, he gestured at Alpha Team, came through the door like angels. He turned back to Adrian, tears in his eyes. I have a wife, 2 daughters. I thought I'd never see them again. Thank you. Thank you for bringing me home. Adrian's throat tightened. She nodded once. You're welcome, sir. Reeves stepped back. A medical officer led him out of the tent. He needed rest, real medical attention, but he was going to be fine. Adrian turned to the SEALs. All right, gentlemen, debrief. I need to know what went right, what went wrong, and what we can do better next time. She spent the next 2 hours going through the mission, step by step, second by second. The SEALs were honest, blunt. They pointed out what worked and what didn't. The intelligence on guard count had been wrong, but not fatally. Plan Bravo had compensated. The exfil had been chaotic, but the alternate LZ had saved them. Communication had been clear, timely. Adrian's guidance from Overwatch had been critical. Multiple SEALs confirmed it. Without her directing them through the wadi, they would have been pinned down. When the debrief was over, the SEALs started filing out. Most of them nodded to Adrian as they passed, a quiet acknowledgement. Thorne was the last to leave. He stopped in front of her. Looked like he wanted to say something, struggled to find the words. Finally, ma'am, in the wadi, when I couldn't see the bend, you told me to trust you. I remember. I did. I trusted you. And you were right. He paused. I just want you to know. I'll never forget that. What you did for us. For me. Adrian looked at him, saw the sincerity in his face, the genuine gratitude. Petty Officer Thorne, you did good work out there. The shot on those Taliban fighters, the way you carried Dr. Reeves, that was solid. Thank you, ma'am. Now go get some rest. You've earned it. He nodded, started to leave, turned back. Ma'am, about the bar, I was wrong, about everything. I'm sorry. Adrian smiled slightly. Petty Officer, I told you to forget the bourbon. I meant it. What matters is what happened out there. You trusted me when it counted. That's all I needed. Thorne smiled, a real smile. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. He walked out. Cole stepped into the tent. He had been listening from outside, giving her space to lead the debrief. That went well, he said. It did. You know what you did right? You didn't just save 14 men. You changed them, especially Thorne. I just did my job. No, you did more than that. You showed them what leadership looks like, what competence looks like, and you did it without ego, without needing to prove anything. That's rare. Adrian sat down on one of the benches. The exhaustion was catching up to her. Sergeant Major, can I ask you something? Anything. Your son, Nathaniel, do you think he would have approved of this? Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down next to her. Nathaniel was a good officer, a good man. He believed in excellence, in doing the job right. He looked at her. He would have been proud to serve under you. Hell, I'm proud to serve with you. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a dog tag. The metal was worn, the edges smooth from years of handling. I want you to have this. Adrian stared at it. Sergeant Major, I can't. You can and you will, because Nathaniel would have wanted it. He died because the mission went wrong. You brought 14 men home because the mission went right. That matters. It matters more than you know. He pressed the dog tag into her hand, closed her fingers around it. Adrian looked down at the tag, the name stamped into the metal. Nathaniel Cole. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, Cole said, for being the kind of officer the Navy needs, the kind we don't have enough of. They sat in silence for a while, two professionals, two warriors, bound by a mission that had succeeded against the odds. Finally, Adrian stood. I should get back. Reports to file. Always reports. Cole stood as well. For what it's worth, Commander, you're going to go far. This mission will open doors. Make sure you walk through them. I will, Sergeant Major. Oh, good. Now go. I'll see you back in Virginia. Adrian walked out of the tent. The desert night had fallen. Stars filled the sky. Billions of them, clear and bright in a way they never were back home. She looked up at them, thought about the mission, the risk, the reward, the 14 men who were alive because she had refused to abort. And she thought about Wyatt Thorne, the man who had spilled bourbon on her and laughed, who had dismissed her as weak, who had learned in the span of 72 hours that strength came in forms he hadn't expected. She smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. Then she walked to the flight line, climbed aboard the C-130, and flew back to Virginia. The mission was complete, but her journey was just beginning. 10 days later, Adrienne walked into the Hideaway Bar on Fifth Avenue. It was a Saturday night. The place was busier than it had been on that Wednesday 2 weeks ago. More people, more noise, more life. She wore civilian clothes, jeans, a simple blouse, hair down. She looked like any other woman in her late 20s grabbing a drink after a long week. She took a seat at the bar, same spot as before. The bartender recognized her immediately. Commander, good to see you. Heard about the mission. Well done. Thank you, Miller. What can I get you? Maker's Mark. Neat. He poured it, slid the glass across the bar. On the house. You don't have to. I want to. Consider it a thank you for your service. Adrienne smiled, took a sip. The bourbon was smooth, warm, exactly what she needed. She pulled out a book, a novel she had been meaning to read for months but never had time for. She opened it, started reading. 15 minutes later, the door swung open. A group of young men walked in, 6 of them, loud, confident, fresh haircuts, military bearing, SEALs, a new class, just graduated. Adrian didn't look up, just kept reading. The SEALs took a table near the back, ordered beers, started talking. Their voices carried. Jokes about BUD/S, speculation about deployments. The usual. One of them stood up, walked to the bar to order another round. He was young, maybe 24, tall, athletic, the kind of swagger that came from thinking you were invincible. He leaned against the bar, tried to get Miller's attention. His elbows swung wide. It connected with the woman sitting 2 seats over. A young professional, mid-20s. She was working on a laptop, had a glass of white wine next to her. The elbow knocked the wine over. It splashed across the laptop. Across her papers, ruined both. The woman gasped, grabbed for napkins. Too late. The damage was done. The SEAL looked at her, blinked, and laughed. Oops, maybe you should work at home, not in a bar. His buddies at the table laughed. One of them shouted something. The SEAL grinned, turned back to Miller to order his drinks. Adrienne set down her book. She stood up, walked over to the SEAL, stood next to him, close enough that he had to acknowledge her. Excuse me, she said quietly. The SEAL looked at her, took in her appearance. A woman, civilian clothes, No obvious military affiliation. He smiled, the kind of smile that said he thought she was interested in him. Hey, can I help you? Actually, yes. You can apologize to that woman and pay for her laptop. The smile faded. What? You knocked over her drink, ruined her laptop. The least you can do is apologize and cover the damage. The SEAL's face hardened. Look, lady, it was an accident. I don't need... A voice cut through from the door. Davies, stand down. Everyone turned. Wyatt Thorne stood in the doorway. He was in his dress uniform. Blues, ribbons across his chest. He looked every inch the professional warrior he was becoming. He walked straight to Davies. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard. Petty Officer Davies, you just disrespected a civilian. In public. Apologize. Now. Davies blinked. But it was just, I don't care what it was. You caused damage. You own it. Apologize. Davies looked at Thorne, saw the rank, saw the seriousness, and understood this wasn't a request. Yes, Petty Officer. He turned to the woman. Ma'am, I'm sorry. That was my fault. Please let me pay for the laptop. The woman was surprised, but she nodded. Thank you. Davies pulled out his wallet, left enough cash to cover the laptop and then some. Then he and his buddies quickly finished their drinks and left. The bar was quiet. Thorne turned to Adrian, saw her standing there. Recognition dawned. Commander, I didn't see you. I know, but I saw you. She smiled. That was good work, Petty Officer. Just trying to pass on what I learned, ma'am. He gestured to the empty stool next to her. May I... Please. They sat down. Miller brought over 2 glasses of bourbon without being asked. Set them down, smiled, walked away. Thorne picked up his glass, looked at it. Then at Adrian. 3 weeks ago, I was that guy. Arrogant, stupid. Thought I knew everything. And now I know I don't know anything, but I'm learning. That's all anyone can do. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Thorne spoke again. Sergeant Major Cole told me he's retiring next month. I know. He also told me he wants me to stick with you. Said you're going places and I should pay attention. Adrian smiled. He said that word for word. So I guess what I'm asking is, if you ever need someone who knows how to follow orders and trust the plan, I'm available. I'll keep that in mind, Petty Officer. They raised their glasses, clinked them together. To the mission, Thorne said. To the mission, Adrian echoed. They drank. Across the bar, the young woman who had been helped was packing up her things. She walked past Adrian and Thorne. Stopped. Thank you, she said to Thorne. That was very kind. Just doing the right thing, ma'am. She smiled, walked out. Adrian looked at Thorne. You're going to be a good leader someday. I hope so. I've got a good example to follow. Her phone buzzed, a text message. She glanced at it. Admiral Stratford, briefing Monday 0600, Operation Nightfall, high-value target in Syria. Your lead, Cole requested as tactical advisor. Confirm. Adrian looked at the message, then at Thorne, then at the bar around her, the place where this had all started, where she had been dismissed, disrespected, underestimated, and where 2 weeks later she sat as a decorated officer who had just pulled off one of the most successful SEAL missions of the year. She typed back, confirmed Admiral, ready when you are. She set the phone down, took another sip of bourbon. The burn was familiar now, comforting. Thorne noticed. Another mission. Always another mission. Need a team. Adrian smiled. We'll see, Petty Officer. We'll see. They sat there for another hour, talking about nothing in particular. The places they'd been, the things they'd seen. 2 professionals sharing a quiet moment before the next storm. And when Adrian finally stood to leave, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not vindication, not pride, not even satisfaction. Just the quiet confidence that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do, leading, protecting, bringing people home. The rest was just noise. She walked out into the Virginia night. The air was cool. The stars were hidden behind city lights. But somewhere out there in the darkness, there were men and women who would need her. And she would be ready. Always. The mission never ended, but neither did she.